So now we pass to Kristian, right? You are presenting for Aarhus. Okay, Aarhus University, where the Interactive Mind Center is Center for Interactive Minds is set up, has always been our sort of paragon or idol, and how to organize also the work of very interdisciplinary milieu and very interdisciplinary groups. So, Kristian, the floor is yours for introducing what you are doing. And
thank you, Joanna. Can you see my presentation here? Yes, perfect. Great. So yeah, thank you so much for putting this together. I'm going to represent the Aarhus Note, and I would like to use this occasion to just a bit like Anna bring up a few examples of research that we are doing these days, and with an invitation for all of you to join in. I think there will be kind of many overlaps of interests and opportunities for exploring new research paradigms here. So, but let's start just with some of Gary Larson's wisdom. So in the small joke here, the text says, the class abruptly stopped practicing. It was a chance not only to employ their skills, but also to save the entire town. And the funny part here is, of course, that these aliens that are attacking the town just happens to consist of planks and bricks, the two things that these karate practitioners recognize from their training, right? And I guess the question is, had those aliens looked a little bit differently, would the karate practitioners here have recognized that they could kind of employ their skills? And I guess this is another aspect of abstraction, right? So the extent to which our representations of certain concepts have qualities that make them possible to transfer knowledge and practices from one context to another, right? So to the extent that we have formed kind of sufficiently abstract representations of what an alien is, we can kind of apply knowledge from one field also into a new field when we encounter aliens that might look a little bit different and so on and so forth. I'll actually get back to aliens in a moment. Okay, so what has been mentioned several times already is this this tendency in existing research to when talking about abstraction, to focus very much on embodiment, but maybe in the kind of solitary sense of having some certain cognitive mechanisms placed very much in the mind of the individual. So often abstraction is portrayed as the situation where, you know, you have an individual that have various experiences through life, and from those are able to kind of, from the token experiences, are able to kind of deduce some kind of more abstract representation or concept or category. We want to at least complement this idea with another, you could say, idea that put more emphasis on the interactive and social aspects of this. So let's imagine a situation where someone has a certain set of experiences, but she then meets up with someone who has another set of experiences of a particular phenomenon, and they interact. And as a consequence, you could say, of them sharing, or with the concept that Joanna has introduced, pulling ground. That is sharing their complementary experiences. You know, they arrive at these shared representations that are you could say, more abstract. So you can kind of complement your own experiences with experiences from other people. And this is something that we have kind of tried to investigate experimentally. This also, again, prepares us to a situation where we suddenly, you know, we are in a changing or in a new environment, and we meet new phenomenon. So here's a new token, and we are maybe better prepared to recognize this as belonging to a certain category. Okay, so I just want to give a few examples of some of the research that we have done in the past, but that are still kind of ongoing. And this is in order to kind of point to some of the mechanisms on the social level that we think could be kind of critical in, you could say, to facilitate or motivate or promote processes of abstraction. And one is the fact that we can kind of share or exchange individual diverse experiences. And I think actually diversity could be important here. So the fact that we do not come with exactly the same kind of experiences, but bring various kind of experiences into dialogue or into conversation might be a critical part here. And the other one is actually that dialogical reflection is also another, you could say, factor. Whenever people meet up and start interacting, it can give rise to kind of a new level of metacognition that allow us to get new insights and to discover things. Here's one way that we have approached this, actually by having experimental participants engaging in a categorization task, either individually or in pairs, where they actually had to collaborate on solving this task. And they would just be presented with these alien figures and asked how they wanted to respond to them. So this was kind of a learning type of situation. They could either, when encountering this alien here, ignore it, or you could say have peace with it. They could tap some kind of valuable jelly from it. They could decide to kill it if they thought it was dangerous, or they could either tap it or both tap and kill it. So there was 4 kind of categories, and they had to kind of base their decision on the looks of these aliens, and got either one or the other type of feedback here. And the way that they had to pick up on what kind of reaction was more appropriate was by looking for particular combinations of features. So these aliens differed, there were kind of a lot of them, and they differed on 5 binary features, having thin legs or thick legs, or eyes on stalks, or arms up or down, and so on and so forth. So by trial and error, learning the particular kind of combination that would make them either dangerous or friendly or valuable or not, they could kind of pick up these rules. And then after a long training session, they would be presented with a transfer task where aliens looked a little bit differently, but to the extent that they were able kind of to represent these categories as in a kind of rule-like manner, they would be able to kind of transfer some of the experiences and make quite qualified guesses here. Also, we had kind of 3 different sessions with different levels of complexity, so the problem became harder and harder. And this was the kind of observations that we made, that in general, throughout the 3 levels of complexity here, groups seemed to have an advantage. They were had a higher general accuracy in making categorizations here. And when looking at the transfer task, they seemed also to be more better in kind of transporting their experiences into a new context and applying their experiences on a new set of stimuli that they hadn't seen before. So these results are credible. And this study here is available as a preprint, but it's under revision. Also, what we did next was that we took all the conversations among group members and looked to the extent to which speech turns from the 2 interlocutors either would be more kind of similar in their vocabularies or more different. And actually, we identified there a tendency that participant pairs that were composed of people who use slightly different vocabularies when discussing these kind of categorization problems actually seem to have a slight advantage over people who have more similar or used more similar vocabularies. There we see maybe kind of an indication of the fact that to the extent that people bring different perspectives or intuitions into the interaction, they might actually be able to, you could say, better reach a level of abstraction that is, at least in this particular kind of context, helping them perform. We took these observations onto another study where we actually wanted to look closer at this level of diversity. So here we are actively manipulating diversity. We are presenting them with the same task. This time it's just a binary decision they have to make. Is this a friendly or dangerous alien? But this time we had, and we gave them, again, simpler feedback. But this time we had, again, a condition where we had individuals. They were trained on one particular categorization rule here with one set of features before they then entered into a set of tests where actually the rules would change repeatedly. Then we had another situation where we had pairs where the pair members were trained individually on the same rule before we put them together and then had them interact. And then we had the important manipulation here. We had a situation where each of the two pair members were trained on different rules. That is, it was different features that were kind of combined to make an alien dangerous or friendly before we put them together and had them interact through a set of rule shifts here. So it followed kind of the, we were inspired by the Mince-Constant card sorting task, where each time that you had a certain amount of correct trials in a row, then the rule would actually change and you would kind of start over trying to pick up the rule. And then we also administered the Big Five personality test and some other surveys that I won't go into in a lot of detail. But what we observed here was, to step back one step here, the important part of this study was that there was actually one abstract meta rule that governed all the, you could say, the rule implementations in the experiment. So for all of the rules, we had feature A plus feature B or feature C making an alien dangerous. And what we just swapped was whether it was feature A was the arms up or down or the eyes on stalks or whatnot. So people could actually, or participants in this study could actually kind of become sensitive to the fact that there was some kind of underlying schema here that would be stable all the way through. And to the extent that they were able to pick up on that, they would be faster in recovering after a rule shift, and they would be better generally at learning the rules faster. So we had some hypotheses that pairs would outperform individuals, but also that diversity pairs would possibly outperform non-diversity pairs, as they would more readily, due to the fact that they come already with different experiences, maybe that would kind of help them get to this more abstract level of representation, and then they would kind of become sensitive to this underlying rule that would also make them faster at recovering from rule changes. And then one thing we also did was that we of course induced here diversity by training them on different rules before they entered into interaction, but we also measured another, you could say, index of diversity and personality using the Big Five, and we actually had some reasons to believe that that would actually not really do any difference here. Here are the results real fast. So indeed, we did observe that over trials here, in general, diversity pairs would have a steeper learning curve. Here they learned faster, they performed better in the task. And when we break it up and look at the different rule changes here, we see that quite consistently, they seem to be faster in recovering from a rule shift and learn the new rule in this particular experimental setup here, which tells us that maybe they are kind of more sensitive to the fact that there's this underlying rule governing the stimuli. We also did a number of other tests. I won't touch upon all of them, but training performance here does not predict performance of the groups, which I think is quite important, because it could be by chance that the individuals that into collaboration here already were very good at this problem, but that's not the case. That is, the performance benefits that we observe here is emergent from the interaction itself. They are not predicted by the individuals going into the groups. Also, very briefly, I can say that when we then afterwards look at diversity in personality, that is not explaining any variance in our performance data. So this is the kind of diversity in experience that we are inducing by our experimental manipulation that is doing the trick here. Good. I also just wanted to point out this this other experimental paradigm that actually we have used in a former collaboration with Joanna. And this is another, I think, great paradigm for looking into aspects of abstraction. So this is a very simple problem. You have to help the little rabbit get to the carrots, and you have to be careful that you don't let the lion out so it go and eat the rabbit. And you do that by pulling one of the levers over here. Now, usually when participants are presented with this paradigm here, they will start thinking about this in very concrete mechanical terms. So this gear is pushing this other gear, making it turn in a particular direction. But they might actually, as they experience more and more of these problems, discover that this is an alternating sequence. So if you know you want this gear to go left, then it's just left, right, left. Then you have to pull the left one here, which is already kind of abstracting a bit away from the kind of causality of the and mechanics of this problem. But you can actually reach an even higher level of abstraction here. You can come to notice that every time there's an unequal number of gears, it's left. And here you're not really anymore considering any part of the kind of concrete implementation of the problem. You're just kind of using a rule. And that becomes particularly then critical when we, in a late trial, present this here. If you are still kind of relying on a very concrete representation of the problem, you would use something like 1.5 minutes or maybe even 2 minutes to solve this. If you are kind of at a very abstract level here representing this problem, then you can do it in 11 seconds. I think that was the fastest, I guess, our participant would do. Now, again, what we have manipulated here is aspect of social interaction. So we have used this paradigm with individuals and pairs doing all the trials together. And then we had a third manipulation where we actually had people again start up like acquainting themselves with the problem individually. So doing the first 5 trials individually before we set them together and had them interact for the last 5 or 4 trials. And what we observe here is, or maybe I should say that one of the ideas again here is that this gives the individuals a bit of time to form their own intuitions and their own perspectives about this. So when they enter interaction, maybe they can have a more reflected discussion and maybe come to notice that there's more than one solution to this problem. I guess what happens with the individuals is often that they are able to solve this problem quite effectively using manual, like low abstraction solutions or representations, but never discover that there actually could be more clever solutions to the problem. That is something that we thought might happen when people come and have slightly different intuitions and perspectives from playing around with the problem. And that actually is what we found. So individuals would typically use the kind of mechanical strategy here, or maybe they will find the kind of, they would discover that it's an alternating sequence and use the left, right strategy. Pairs would have a more abstract representation often, but we saw that in this kind of compy situation or condition, we would have many more participants actually arriving at the counting strategy, which is the maximum abstract strategy here. And actually, unbeknown to Joanna, we actually have collected a new batch of data late this fall on this particular task. So we are hoping to do more work on this. So we thought that here are just a few examples of paradigms that we are using these days, and that I think would be productive ways in which we could go and investigate aspects of of abstraction in our collaborative setting here. And there's a lot of things that we could look into. For instance, something like near versus far transfer. We have now been manipulating bottom-up kind of aspects of diversity and these kind of things, but we could also imagine that we would discuss other manipulations that could kind of promote abstraction in these kind of settings, and so on and so forth. Also, I want to mention that we're also doing a lot of research these days on what sometimes is referred to as vertical interaction or transmission, right? So various kind of experimental paradigms where we try to you could say simulate aspects of cultural evolution and transmission. And here's from one of Karsten and Andreas' latest studies, where they have kind of set up an online platform where they can have participants coming in. For instance, in this particular case, they are doing drawings, so they are presented with a drawing and have to make a copy, either still looking at the drawing or from memory, as in this particular condition here. And then whatever the participant in this or this participant is doing is transferred to a new participant who has to copy that, and so on and so forth, in a transmission chain. And that provides us with these kind of fantastic transmission chains that you see down here, where the same picture has gone through various kind of processes of repeated reproduction, where we can go and then and investigate aspects of the extent to which they change in complexity, also in abstractness, for instance, in conventionality. And so there's a lot of things we can do there. And this particular platform also is very flexible. So now we are looking at drawings, but we could in principle use it for other purposes as well. Now, these were just a few examples of what we could see would be kind of potentials for future collaborative research projects. Of course, as has been mentioned several times this morning, this is not just a research project. So I just wanted to mention that we are also responsible for other parts of this project, and we have identified a team of people at Aarhus University who are all involved in research management and research support that are looking very much forward to work with you in Warsaw. And this could involve staff visits, various kind of presentations on how we do research organizations at Aarhus University. Also the kind of support that we are organizing in terms of grant writing and grant participation, and a number of more concrete workshops that we are organizing in Aarhus would be available also for staff members from Warsaw University to come and visit and participate in. So these people here look very much forward to also engage with research support staff from Warsaw University during the next 3 years. And that's all for me. I apologize for going a little bit over time.
Thank you, Kristian, so much. We forgot to clap also for Anna, so let's do this for both. Sorry, these meetings are kind of difficult. I just would like to reinforce the last point, also from experience, seeing how really wonderfully this works in Aarhus, that the administrative staff and researchers, in a sense, form a team which is working, I think, more closely than in Warsaw, where we are all overworked, of course, and a little bit focused on our own tasks. And really, we have a lot to learn there, of course, also from the other two partners. But thank you for mentioning this. Okay, we have a couple of questions, and first from Urszula Kuczma from the YouTube viewers. Kristian, did you consider measuring the divergent thinking in your participants? And
we didn't actually. No, we did not measure that directly. So, but we could definitely do that. So I guess such a measure, divergent thinking measure, would, again, you could say, possibly target aspects of the individual, you could say, group member. So the individual group member's propensity to be able to think divergently. I think what is really interesting to get from these experiments is that we take participants, we put them in a particular context of interaction, and suddenly they do think more divergently or more convergently, you could say, in some so individuals doing the task alone in general simply do not really think as divergently as participants put into a particular kind of social context. And I think that's the important observation here, but it would definitely be relevant also to maybe take more individual measures and see how they. So the measures that I think is the interesting observation that we do see is that when we take individual measures, they seem to explain very little of the variance in the performance of our peers in these experimental contexts, suggesting that what is happening there is really coming out of the interaction.
Very nice. Maybe already a small project here, checking for those diversity measures.
Yeah, definitely.
Julian had a similar question on sort of characterizing people on different traits than Big Five. Perhaps more task-specific measures, but I think this is related.
Yeah. So I didn't mention, of course, all the details. So we have the Big Five, and we also have another scale, which is called the intrinsic motivation inventory, where we do test a number of other things, but they are not, again, maybe not targeted particularly on the task relevant aspects here. They are targeting aspects of the interaction, and actually there are some of these measures that do significantly explain or explaining more variance in our data, but orthogonal variance to the experimental manipulation. So which is nice.
I just wanted to point out that your alien task is sort of like a machine learning task. Probably our students also.
It's a classification task in some sense, yes.
How to train the ensembles, if to train them all very similar or very divergent subsets and so on. Professor Jurevich also asks, okay, why did you choose aliens? Couldn't you choose some more culturally grounded individuals like angels or
yeah,
or maybe
yes, definitely. I think it was a coincidental choice. We wanted, of course, actually to make a situation where people couldn't come very prepared and have very different levels of expertise already as they enter the experimental setting. So in that sense, it had to be some kind of new phenomenon that they would encounter, right? But it need not have been aliens. So it could also have been abstract shapes for that matter. Yeah.
Yes, and I think this question about the dialogue between the machine learning and your experiments is very, very pertinent. Also compatible with what our students seem to know. All right. Yeah, Julian says aliens seem to be popular in category.
We are not the first ones. Actually, we were inspired by a study by Corder and Voigtlis called Conventional Wisdom, a paper where they had used aliens. I think that was one of the reasons why we jumped on that.
Yeah, but we could use some, you're right, maybe more ecologically grounded also entities. From Karolina Ziembowicz, what was the ways you observed that the pair members transferred their knowledge to each other? Were they doing this overtly or?
Yeah. So So I actually, when I used the concept transfer, it was in a slightly different sense, right? So this was, you have a pair, they sit and they are presented with a number of aliens. They learn what are the features that are, or the kind of characteristics of the aliens that are dangerous or not. And then they are presented with a transfer task. That is, they presented with aliens that look a little bit different. And we observe to the extent to which they're able to bring in their experiences from the training and apply that into a new kind of, in a new context where things look different. So that's, of course, then we're looking at aspects of their interaction. I'm not sure I used a transfer there about that, but we had people just sitting by the same computer and talking freely with each other in the first experiment, right? Or actually in both experiments. And then we studied their transcripts of their verbal interactions, right? So we don't know exactly to what extent the knowledge is transferred between participants, but we can see as an outcome of their interaction, new things are happening there. So, or they're able to solve the task more proficiently.
Okay, thanks so much. I hope that this discussion will continue also online, but remember about our conferences, and we will definitely continue there. Also, you can always write to us, and to, I think, did you include your emails, and do you agree to
I hope you can share my email. I didn't put it in my slide, but otherwise, if you're going to share slides, I can put in emails for all the three of us, Andreas, Karsten, and I.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.